How's everybody doing today? This is Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, and today we are going to tie up a fun springtime pattern of a little baby bass, and this is going to be tied as a variant of a Clouser minnow. So in the vise we do have an Ahrex SA250, and this is the size 6. So you can see the curvature in this hook it's designed as a shrimp hook. But as far as tying smaller Clousers, I really like this hook because of the bend here, and it increases that hook gap distance just a pinch. So for a thread, we've got some black uni. This is size 6/0. I'm just going to get this started and then kind of hang out right in this area so we can get some eyes put on here. So for the eyes, I've got some brass eyes, and they're size large. I'll show you here. And these are a fluorescent orange. These are from Hareline. But you can see on this shrimp hook, there's a little divot here behind the hook eye, and that happens to work really well as a spot to place your dumbbell eyes to keep this hook inverted, hook point up once we got these tied on. I do have a little bit of Loctite gel super glue here. I'm gonna put a little smidgen of that on top. That's about 3 smidgens, but we'll work with it. And now we are ready to toss these eyeballs on here. So let's get that positioned, a little bit of an angle, get that first wrap over, and the second one, now we have 2 X wraps there. I'm gonna look from the front, find out where it's straight, and then I'm going to start adding pressure in front and in back, and then we'll make another X and going back in front. We're just going to repeat that alternating pattern over and over with as much tension as we can get on that thread and really cinch these eyes down. You know, these flies will get eaten, chewed on, hit the rocks, hit the bottom, get snagged every once in a while. If you don't have those dumbbell eyes securely fastened, you will very quickly find out your fly is missing its eyeballs, and then it doesn't know where to swim. So put a little extra effort into getting those eyes attached properly. You'll be glad you did. And now we're back to where we started. I'm going to get a couple more wraps here, and then we can start tying this fly. And like so. Wiggle these, there's no movement, so we are ready. Now typically you would start the underbody of your Clouser from behind these eyes with a pinch of some Bucktail, but of course we can't tie anything normally. And since this is a variant, let's vary it. Alright, so I've got the thread back. I'm not going to worry about climbing up the curvature here, so right about there is good. So just past the hook point. I'm going to come to roughly that spot. And now for our tail, we're going to be using some Nature Spirit white bucktail, or excuse me, their natural bucktail. And I won't be stacking these hairs to get them evened at the tips. I'm just going to grab a pinch that has some somewhat evened tips and go from there, because if you look in nature, these, you know, when you're replicating a bait fish or anything like that, there aren't a lot of straight lines in nature, and so if these hairs are not even exactly, it's going to work in our favor. So I'm going to do a tail that's going to end up being slightly less than a length of the hook here. Right about the length of the hook, I should say. All right, so there's my starting point. Get that back, and we do want to keep this bucktail on the bottom of our hook shank, so check both sides as you're tying this. Make sure it's staying where you want it to be. Tie it all the way back so that very last thread wrap that we made is met, and then there's your tail. and simply get all of these hairs back on top again, and then we can remove them. And voila, finish wrapping all that down. Alright, so here comes the big variant, if you will. We're going to be using a loop. If you look at a lot of the smaller bait fish, you know, all that, they're very small profile, they're very slim, but there's something about tying a baby bass with just a little bit of a belly that makes me happy, and so I figured I'd share that with you guys. So there we have our 3 turns around our loop, get it back up. Now there's our knot, a couple wraps in front and 1 in behind, and that thread can be moved up in front of the eyes. Undo those twists that you used around your loop, and now I'm going to just slip my twister in there to hold it for a second as I show you this. So this is going to go inside of the loop, and this is a little blend of some spawn Simi seal and white silver mixed with regular Simi seal, Arizona Simi seal in golden Peacock. And this is our magic blender for the day. And these are from Hareline, and they are wool carders. So you get your little dubbing put on one side and simply pull down on with the other one, and it'll pull the material, and then you just transfer them back and forth until you get a nice blend. And so that's what we've done to achieve what I think looks like a pretty good bass body color. So now let's start stacking some of our fibers. When you're doing this, don't work with a lot of fibers at once. Get a clump and start pulling it apart and then replacing it on top of what's still in your offhand, and then just keep repeating that, and you'll start to stack the fibers. And as you're doing that, once you've got enough to fill the body of this fly, you see how nice and sparse that is. Especially for these types of flies, you do want a sparse body. Instead of a little belly, if you put too much material in this loop, you will have a very large belly, and this poor fly would be looking for sweatpants. We don't want that. So let's get some dubbing thrown into that loop. It's going to be a little bit much. Let's see. Get my tool back in there, and I'm going to get rid of some of this. And again, if you're going to err on one side, err on the side of it being too sparse versus too full. All right, so I'm looking at roughly 1 3/4 for that loop as far as our height of the material inside the loop. Once we've got that twisted up, here I've got my Swiss CDC brush tool. I'm just going to work my way down and back up that little loop of dubbing, get those trapped fibers released, and we are good to go. So just so you can see, it's a pretty sparse loop there, and that's just what we want. So now I'm going to gently coax some of these fibers back before we start wrapping, and then as we're wrapping, I'm going to keep that off hand readily available to just keep moving those fibers back with every wrap. If you're going to coax, this is the time to use that word. We're coaxing those fibers to do what we would want them to do, which is flow back toward the hook point. All right. So you can see here, we're going to get right up to behind those dumbbell eyes, and that is just what we want. So here's the last wrap of the loop, and now when I catch this thread, I want to be coming over the top in between the dumbbell, and I will come in an X with my thread behind the opposite side of that dumbbell. And now I can take one wrap in the back and come up between the eyes again. So now I've got a full X of wraps over this tag end. Now I'll pull the tag end back over itself toward the hook point and repeat that step X once over and then X in between again, and now we're in the front. This tag end is completely secured, and we can simply get that out of the way. So now let's get this brush back in action. I'm going to brush everything one more time very quickly, and then I'm going to comb these fibers gently back toward the hook point. And is this necessary? Probably not. Does it make me happy? Absolutely. Neat flies tend to just look better in the fly box, and that's why I like it. All right, so now you can see this is, starting to give you the idea here of what we're looking at. So now we're going to have these materials on top, and this, once it's wet, will have just a tiny bit of a belly effect for those little bass. All right, so now that we've got that situated, we are ready for some flash. And for the flash, I'm going to use a mix of both silver crystal flash and black crystal flash. And for this, if you look at a bass, their body patterning, they have some vertical barring, some very distinguishable markings. However, that's usually in the adults. In those very young fish, the black markings are very faint, if at all. And so you have a mostly dominant silverish body with hints of, olive tones, some yellows and different things. So we're not going too crazy here, but as far as the flash, I like to have roughly twice the amount of silver as I do of the black. All right, let's get that twisted a little bit. I'm just hand mixing some of these fibers of the flash. I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could get crazy on how you blend it. And if you're tying production style, of course, you would know exactly how many strands of each one you're using. So you can see here, that's a healthy chunk of flash, and I'm okay with that. So I'm just going to fold it over my thread like so. And now as I come up, I can decide exactly where I want to put that flash. Boom, right on top. And let's work that X wrap and then one full wrap behind the eyes. And now our flash is going to sit on top of our little chubby bass body. And I'm going to give another X, one more time behind, and now up front. As you see here, I've not left a ton of room for that last bit of bucktail, but it's okay, because when we're tying Clousers or any variants of a Clouser, we don't want a lot of excess material up front there. Much like our body, the bucktail, when done sparsely, is more effective. All right, so I'm going to trim all that flash here in a minute, but for the next step, let's just get right into this bucktail. We've got some olive bucktail, again, Nature Spirit. Let me get a chunk of this cut off here. Again, still not evening the tips. You do want to get those short fibers out, any underfluff in there. So now you can see this is going to be very sparse, right? So that's all we're going to get to sit on top of that. And as far as the length, use your tail as a measurement. I'll try to show you on your side. So you want these fibers to reach to the end of the tail, or even a couple of them go slightly past. It's okay, because this is all building a taper that slicks down toward the back. And again, this is one of those where you can cut right here before tying down on top, but we're just going to go at it. And so I'll get a loose thread wrap around, and then I'll tighten as I come up. And what that will do is not add a lot of flare to the back portion. And if these tail or trim portions of the butts flare, I'm not concerned at all. And get that as far back toward those dumbbell eyes as you can. Very secure wraps. Now I can trim these guys out, and you'll see the advantage, of cutting those hairs beforehand. Now I have some cleanup work to do in the front here. Had I trimmed those bucktail fibers before tying them in, this is already cleaned up for you. All right, so I can get about my tidy business there, and we have another element to put on here. so I'm not going to get too worried about it. And now you can see this is starting to take shape, but one last thing on top, and it's going to be a few fibers of some black bucktail. And just looking for the proper length here, because remember, these now have to reach as far back as the olive that we just placed on there. And this is a great addition to any of your baitfish patterns. You know, just look at the top of a species when you catch your next fish. And as far as their own camouflage and protection, they're going to be typically darker on top, on the dorsal side, so that as birds and aerial predators are looking down, they do have a chance to blend in. So here we have right about where we need to be. I'm going to go right on top of that olive, and I do want it to stay on top without spreading out all the way. So soft wraps to start, increasing tension as we go back. I'm just going to look at the top, and as you can see, it's olive on either side of that black, which is the effect we want. And before I get to that hook eye, remember, trim these butts like so. And you can see there's not going to be any issue about having a clean finish here. And take a couple of passes all the way back, as close to those eyes as you can get, and then all the way forward again. We want as much of a uniform nose, if you will, on this fly as we can get. And there we have it. Time for that whip finish that everybody loves so much. And we're going to do 2 of them. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 wraps. Pull down, snug it up. There's our first whip finish. Now we're ready for the second. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And voila. So that was convenient. There's our tag end. Alrighty, so now what we have to do is we'll pop this out, and you can see how long this flash is. How long do we want this to be? Well, it's kind of up to, you know, beauty in the eye of the beholder, but I don't want it sticking out too much past our tail or any of those dorsal fibers of bucktail. And I also don't want a straight across cut. So if you can imagine, I'll try to do this while holding it. Angle cut, and then it ensures that not all these fibers are going to end at the same point. If you do that, this will be, yeah, it's still too straight. Let me get rid of just a few more. Yeah, I like that much better. And there we have it. Let me toss this guy back in the vise for you. There we go. So there we have a baby bass Clouser variant tied on the shrimp hook from Ahrex. And this thing is ready for business. As you can see, you could vary the colors on this to match any number of bait fish, even some that aren't even in existence right now. But fun fly, doesn't take a lot of time, pretty simple, and of course catches fish. So I hope you guys had fun watching this. I know I have fun doing these videos. Josh has fun making videos. And we do want some participation from you guys. So if you could let us know in the comments what you like, maybe what you don't like, or what you'd like us to see us do next, that would be great. And as always, please remember to hit like and to subscribe. And thanks, guys, and we will see you on the water.